Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take a stack of shared sources, research, and history, and just deliver a shortcut to being well-informed, complete with some surprising facts, and hopefully enough humor to keep you hooked. So today we are putting two absolute titans of the ancient world side by side. We've got Lucius Annaeus Seneca, the incredibly influential counselor, and then we have Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher who actually ruled the entire Roman Empire. These two men, they're separated by about a century, but they really form the bedrock of Stoicism as we know it.
And what's so fascinating here is just how different their lives were. I mean, they're both absolute cornerstones of Stoic thought for sure. But Seneca, he was the intellectual, the courtier, the dramatist, navigating the treacherous politics of Rome under Nero. Marcus Aurelius, on the other hand, he was just born into duty. He was the commander, the administrator. He carried the actual physical weight of the empire.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack how their philosophies, these ancient ideas of duty, nature, and tranquility, how they line up with our challenges today. We're going to examine their legacies, the contradictions, and the surprisingly potent relevance of both of them.
And we'll wrap it all up by asking a pretty imaginative question. If these two Stoic thinkers had to choose a modern electric vehicle, what would their ethics tell them to pick?
Okay, I love that. So let's unpack this by starting with the elder statesman, Seneca. He lived from roughly 4 BC to 65 AD. And when you look at his life, it's just this staggering mix of roles. He's a philosopher, a politician, a famous playwright, an imperial tutor. The man was a force of nature.
His role as a dramatist gets overlooked, but it is so important. He's the only Latin author whose tragedies survived intact, and they are incredibly dark. I mean, his plays like Medea or Oedipus, they weren't just entertainment. They were deep dives into the conflict between destructive passion, what he called furor, and, cold, disciplined reason.
So he's basically workshopping his philosophy on stage.
Exactly. And you can draw a direct line from him to later European tragedy. I mean, Shakespeare was definitely influenced by his work.
But the role he's most famous for, and the one that ultimately, ended his life, was tutoring young Nero. He gets recalled from exile in 49 AD specifically for this job to be Nero's principal advisor.
Right, and he guides Nero through what historians call the happy 5 years of his reign. But that immediately brings up the central tension of Seneca's life. He became an immensely rich and powerful man, a true one-percenter, while constantly writing about the virtues of poverty and sobriety.
Okay, so that's the big question. How did he, or really any Stoic, square that? How can you preach detachment from stuff while having more stuff than anyone else?
Well, the key is this Stoic concept of adiaphora, which means things indifferent.
Hmm.
Stoicism doesn't say you have to be poor. It says you have to be internally free from your attachment to things. Virtue is the only real good. Vice is the only real evil.
And everything else, wealth, poverty, health, sickness, is just neutral.
Exactly, it's neutral. Seneca's philosophy was basically, if fortune gives you wealth, you can use it. But you have to be ready to lose it all tomorrow without it breaking you inside. He was kind of stress testing the idea that you could be a millionaire and still be free.
So that makes his focus on inner serenity and freedom from passion more of a practical test, not just an abstract thought.
Precisely. And if you look at his practical philosophy, probably his most revolutionary idea was about time management. His book, On the Shortness of Life, is just a blistering social critique.
The one where he argues life isn't actually short.
Right, but that we waste it. It's an idea that just hits so hard today.
It really does.
Yeah, he saw how meticulous people were with their money, but how unbelievably reckless they were with their most precious asset, their time. He saw them chasing useless jobs, political ambition, too many social obligations, all of it. He was telling people to dedicate their time to self-mastery. That's the only thing that really grows.
And his life ends with one last huge philosophical act.
His death in 65 AD is like the textbook Stoic exit. Nero orders him to commit suicide after he's implicated in a conspiracy, and Seneca faces it with total calm. He opens his veins, but because he's old, it's a slow process. So he just calmly dictates final letters. He's demonstrating that a true sage accepts the end without fear. It's just part of nature.
That is a powerful image. Now let's shift to the Emperor of Duty himself, Marcus Aurelius, reigned from 121 to 180 AD. If Seneca was this kind of conflicted intellectual, Marcus Aurelius was the real deal, the philosopher king, the last of the 5 good emperors.
He's a global phenomenon today for one reason: the meditations. And what makes that book so powerful is knowing how it was created. It was never meant to be published.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? This was his private journal. He called it To Himself, just a series of personal notes written in Greek, often in a military tent out on the freezing, brutal Danubian frontier. He was journaling his way through a crisis.
Which is why it's the ultimate guide to mental resilience. It's just him, talking to himself, battling his own weaknesses, reminding himself to be a good person, to accept fate, to stay calm in the middle of chaos. Just think about that. Waking up in the cold, dealing with liars and idiots all day, watching your soldiers die, and then writing down, when you wake up, and tell yourself you will meet the busybody, the ungrateful, the arrogant.
He was literally giving himself a mental prep talk for the day ahead.
A daily mental battlefield prep, absolutely.
And his reign wasn't some golden age of peace. He lived, like you said, in the trenches. He was fighting threats from outside and collapse from within at the same time.
Exactly. He was hit with relentless hardship right away. First, the Marcomannic Wars, these huge invasions by Germanic tribes. He spent years on the front lines. Then the Antonine Plague sweeps across the empire. This wasn't a small thing. It was probably smallpox. It might have killed millions, maybe a quarter of the whole population. He was trying to hold the borders of a dying world.
So his philosophy wasn't some nice hobby. It was the tool he needed to survive and to govern.
That is the absolute key to understanding him. He believed that every person, especially him, was assigned a role by the cosmos. And by cosmos, he meant the rational, ordered universe, this giant city of gods and men. So for him, damaging the community was just illogical. It was against nature itself, because we're all, cells in one big body.
Yeah.
His duty was to the whole.
He had that view from above where our personal problems look tiny against the backdrop of eternity.
Yes, the view from above. It's a core tool from the meditations. He would remind himself that all the things he was stressing about, fame, politics, whatever, would all pass away, just like everything before them. It's a practice of radical humility.
And sadly, his death, around 180 AD, it marked the end of the Pax Romana, that long Roman peace. And his son, Commodus, was a complete disaster.
A total disaster. And it raises this really tough question, can even the wisest person override destiny? Marcus was obligated by tradition to name his son, and he did his duty, even though the result was tragic.
But before we move on, we have to talk about that amazing story about his statue, the big bronze equestrian statue in Rome. Why did that one survive when all the others were melted down?
It's an incredible piece of luck, really. During the Middle Ages, the church was destroying all these symbols of pagan Rome. But this statue, they thought it was Constantine, the first Christian emperor.
No way.
Yes, so they saved it. If they had known it was the pagan Stoic Marcus Aurelius, it would have been melted down for sure. It survived purely by mistake and identity.
That's amazing. A symbol of power and discipline that survived because he was confused with a symbol of spiritual power. Okay, so let's take these two figures. The wealthy counselor telling us to stop wasting time, and the emperor fighting in the mud for the community, and drop them into our world. The age of climate change, data overload, electric cars.
Right. This is where we get to the thought experiment you set up, the EV analogy. What would their core ethics prioritize if they had to choose an electric car today?
Let's start with Seneca, the man who hated useless luxury, noise, and showing off. What's he looking for?
Seneca's idea of living according to nature wasn't about rejecting technology. It was about using resources wisely. This is actually where we get the idea of the Seneca effect.
Okay, we need to define that. What is the Seneca effect?
It's the observation that systems, like an economy or an empire, tend to grow slowly, but they collapse very, very quickly.
Like a cliff.
Exactly, the Seneca cliff. He would see our environmental crisis as a potential Seneca effect, where slow damage suddenly leads to rapid system failure.
So he'd favor an EV as a rational way to mitigate that collapse.
I think so. He hated noise and black smoke. A silent, non-polluting EV fits perfectly with his ideal of advanced but reasonable living. He was rich, so he'd still want something high-tech.
But he'd use it frugally. That sounds like a Tesla Model S or a Model 3. Very high-tech, fast, but capable of silent travel. He'd probably keep it in chill mode, a tool for meditation, not for showing off.
That fits perfectly. Now, for Marcus Aurelius, the problem is different. His top priority isn't personal calm. It's responsibility to the cosmos, to the whole.
Right, the man who bore the weight of the world. He's choosing a car based on universal duty. What does that even look like?
Well, since he saw us all as part of one shared organism, damaging the air that everyone breathes would be the most irrational anti-community act possible. So electric power is the only rational choice of service to the cosmos.
He's looking for the car that represents maximum responsibility, durability, ethical alignment, not flash.
Absolutely. Sober, safe, duty-focused, ethically sourced materials. He wouldn't care about the 0 to 60 time. He'd want the vehicle built with the least harm to the planet and the highest safety rating. He would pick a Volvo EX90 or a Polestar.
The ultimate vehicle for the Stoic civil servant.
You got it. It embodies rational choice, community safety, and a minimalist design rooted in ethics.
That's a brilliant way to frame the difference. Seneca's EV is for personal tranquility and managing resources. Marcus Aurelius's is an act of cosmic duty.
And we should briefly mention the outsider, Epicurus. He's not a Stoic, but he'd also choose an EV for a totally different reason.
Ah, yes. Epicurus was all about Atarassia, the absence of disturbance.
For him, the noise and vibration of a gas engine are disturbances, sources of anxiety. He wouldn't care about the cosmos or resource limits. He would just want the smoothest, quietest ride possible.
Total peace of mind. He wants to just glide.
Undisturbed. So his choice would be pure luxury and silence. Something like a Lucid Air or a BMW i7, a silent bubble built just for the driver's comfort.
What a fantastic way to put it all together. From the bloody tents on the Danube to a silent, self-driving car, the core lesson of Stoicism is still there. Absolute power, whether it's imperial or technological, is pretty meaningless without inner discipline and a commitment to the common good.
We really hope this deep dive into the source material on Seneca and Marcus Aurelius has given you some new ways to think about your own sense of duty and progress today.
For sure. I mean, Marcus Aurelius chose not to abuse his infinite power. He chose discipline. So when you think about the power we hold in our hands, this absolute decentralized power over information and attention, what's our greatest duty to the cosmos today? What power do we choose not to abuse? Something to think about.
We appreciate you sharing your sources and your time with us. Thank you for listening.
We invite you to follow our channel for more deep dives into fascinating topics just like this one. We hope to see you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.